Hello, internet people, artists, fans, all of you. Welcome to Archetype, sponsored by Lenovo. Your host, me, as usual. And yeah, it's now March, which means we're getting into a new character. So it's going to be super exciting. And I'm really looking forward to this month because it's one of my favorite things to discuss and talk about, which is creating creatures, doing some creature design stuff. Obviously, we have Creature Corner, but this is going to be a little different than that because we're going to be trying to fit into our kind of stylized mech world that we've got going on here. So this is what our last character for February was our Darvish character, just a character that fights, maybe using sand and runs through the desert and does all sorts of fun stuff. So we came up with some fun stuff with this guy. And so for this month, I thought it would be fun to, again, if we're doing, a mech last month, then we can go over making, a creature or something organic this month, which I'm excited for because, like I said, that's my specialty and that's what I love to do. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it, and we'll see what we can kind of come up with. So I grabbed some reference of some desert animals that I think are really cool. I think it's great to have like a library or an idea of references that you are using, but when it comes to like an actual board that I'll look at, I try not to gather too much too soon. Just because I think it's nice to try to stick with, a certain type of shape language, or maybe if you start out with some simple ideas and try to extrapolate from, what you have, then you can start, looking for more specific reference. But having so much, reference can kind of sometimes be problematic just because there's like too many options. So I think it's nice to kind of pick a few things and then try to grow from that. So that's what we're going to do. So I love pangolins. They're adorable, but we could try to think of something where they're a little bit more menacing, or we could combine them with, the carnivores of the desert world, which are something like maybe mountain lions or, foxes or lynxes or bobcats, So yeah, we can kind of start doing that. So, for these doodles, I also want to talk about, like, I think it's important too to do some basic shape studies, in first. Ian McKay kind of talks about this as well, is, before getting into creature design, especially today, because I haven't drawn too much today, so it'd be nice to do a little bit of warming up as well, is it's good to kind of look at these animals and look at this reference that you have and try to break down some some of the shapes that you like, or some of the shapes that you see that are working for you, just as reference for like a visual library. Especially if you're not used to drawing animals. Drawing animals can be a kind of very different path from drawing humans. It's all comparative anatomy, which is important to note. Animals share a lot of the same, if not almost all the same, muscular structure as we do. Certain animals may not have things like clavicles, such as big cats and dogs, because they're quadrupedal and they're more about running forward than they are about, really mobile motion in our shoulders like we have. But overall, you can apply what you know about human anatomy and, kind of look at it comparatively and, make animal anatomy out of it. And knowing both, I think, is super important. Here in LA, I used to go to the LA Zoo all the time. And I still do. I still love going to the LA Zoo and draw. I also have puppies, so I like to draw my dogs. But drawing things in motion, I think, is also super important. So you have an understanding of how these muscles function and how they overlap onto one another. And looking at proportion and whatnot. And if you're kind of scared of, drawing animals in motion, you can start with going to something like the zoo, or not the zoo, sorry, the Natural History Museum, which is also something that I do, or something similar to you, wherever you may be. There's tons of cool natural history museums, maybe not as big and grand as the one in LA. I've always meant to go back to the one in New York to go draw, because that one's amazing and beautiful, but there's also tons of reference online. But I think it's really important to go and study, this stuff first before jumping into that stuff. Someone on Twitch is saying they got attacked by a penguin at the zoo once. Never again. I want to know more. I want to know, how do you get attacked by a penguin at a zoo? That's what I would love to know. But yeah, so I like to start with like some warm-up drawings just to get an idea and feeling of shape and form. A lot of my animal drawing also comes from looking at other animal artists. So I'm a big fan of Tara Whitlatch, and I'm a big fan of Claire Wendling and David Coleman. My backstage buddy could probably drop those names for you in the chat if you would like to give those more of a search. Give it a Google. It's definitely worth your time. So yeah, but I'm just gonna do some warm-up stuff because we have time. I keep forgetting that we have time, and considering how much time I have usually to draw and create a character, I need to teach myself to slow down a little bit, and we're gonna have a good time today. And we're gonna take it easy, and you can doodle along with me if you would like. But yeah, I'm just trying to get some proportions and shapes going, just as like a warm up before I dive into anything. Thank you, backstage buddy. But yeah, a lot of this is about breaking down shapes, and then along with there's a lot of really cool foreshortening with this little fennec fox that I'm drawing right now, which I love. So looking at where the hip actually comes out from, and giving that little overlap, and his little fluffy, furry leg that is also his butt, and then his leg coming and dropping down. We don't see his feet. You can either kind of, based on the perspective, try to come up with one, but you also just stick with the reference and be like, oh yeah, I don't see any feet, I'm gonna curl his tail though, because I want to see his tail. And I probably will just kind of draw his feet. So these aren't supposed to be like anything, again, don't be married to these sketches. They're not supposed to be amazing or super clean. My sketches might look a little cleaner than yours if you are not used to drawing animals. I've drawn animals a lot, so these shapes are not unfamiliar to me, but it's still good to always warm up with them. Oh, we got the full story now about this penguin. Back in the 4th grade, he took a wrong turn into the penguin enclosure, which was terrible. And then you got attacked by a defensive mama penguin. That's amazing. I love that story. That's fantastic. If we weren't doing desert, that would inspire me to create a penguin creature. Who knew they could be so vicious? Nature can be pretty intense sometimes. But long story short, double check which way you're going at the zoo, and don't accidentally go into an enclosure that you're not supposed to go to. Although I'm sure getting up close and personal with penguins, you took a lot of art experience away from that. You know how their flippers feel. So that's awesome. I love that story. Could have been worse. You could have been, near the lions exhibit or something. So I would say with penguins, you got off probably pretty easy there. There you go. So yeah, you can see these drawings are, whoops, my not free hand is on. These drawings aren't, they're not supposed to be also super long, just very constructive. So it's just about like getting construction. And part of the reason why doing this is, if you're not used to drawing a big cat or a fox, like you want to familiarize yourself with these shapes or find something that you think would be, interesting. I love the shapes of big cats. So me personally, I think for our creature design, we'll be going with, some sort of, his head's a little too small, some sort of big cat shape. My thought too was because our Darvish character, he's multi-limbed, and I'm not entirely sure. I imagine him pretty tall, but it would be kind of cool if maybe he has to fight against like a pack of these things. So, it's about facing numbers. more than anything else. I love these pangolins, so let's go ahead and get drawing this little pangolin dude. So yeah, a lot of it's just about gesture, overall gesture and shape. I'm looking at the apexes that I see. And this pangolin is really interesting to draw because he's a bunch of armor. So this is where knowing other animal anatomy, will help you. If you look up what are subspecies or what's the kingdom the animal kingdom, genre that like belongs in. I believe they're in the same scope as anteaters, if I'm not mistaken, but I could be. It's been a while since I've researched what kind of subspecies pangolins are. But, looking up another creature that has similar anatomy, that also doesn't have armor like the pangolin does, will help you understand, the structures that are going on. So for me, I know what an anteater looks like, and there's a lot of similarities with their tails and with their structure, how they walk on the fronts of they walk on the knuckles and stuff on the front here. So you can kind of block in that basic structure first, and I know the way most animal back legs function along with what an anteater's back leg is. And we can kind of make sure that we play with those correct shapes. Because I believe, again, there's a lot of different ways animal anatomy can confuse you, where an anteater's leg is very different from, a mountain lion. A mountain lion has the hips here with the great trochanter, the femur, and then it has what would be the shin. And then their ankle bone is actually up here and it goes down. So this is equivalent to our foot. And then it walks on its toes here. So you can think of it that way. But for anteater, and it's also same for bears. Like this is the pelvis, then there's the femur, kneecap, and then there's the shin. And then its ankle bone is actually more like ours. This is called plantigrade, right? Because they plant their feet onto the ground. And so again, it's the same bones, but in different proportions. So, understanding and reading about that and drawing reference from, those creatures are really important. And again, I'm not worried for this pangolin. Like, I'm not actually overly worried about getting the pose right. It's really just more about, I want to get the shapes underneath, and then I want to look at the structure of those, the armor plates. So when you look at them, they kind of spiral out and they overlap each other, like this. If I'm looking at the pattern, right? So they're not really staggered, so looking at stuff like that in order to influence what you'll be designing later, and how they're kind of smaller up in the front and then they get bigger is really cool. And looking at how, if I try to zoom in a little bit on this picture, or maybe look at this picture that might have a little more detail, like looking at how these overlap even into their arms. Like it's crazy how big this scale is, and how big these platings are that go, around the outside of their arms. The inside's a lot softer and squishier. It doesn't wrap all the way around. You can kind of see that right there, how the plate stops there. And then on the inside is all like kind of soft bellied. So, looking and referencing how it's just like a literal desert tank. It's kind of awesome. They're adorable, but also very efficient at protecting themselves. It's pretty great. So, you can block in this stuff first by blocking in where you want those lines to be. I'm making mine a little bigger as of right now, but I kind of like spacing them out evenly big, and then you can break them up even more later into smaller parts, and it stays a little bit more even that way if you want to do that. So, you can kind of block out these like this. And for stuff like this, I'm pretty impatient when it comes to drawing, but I'll try to find where there's, you know, one big shape, and I'll try to keep as proportioned as I can. I'll look to make sure that I'm trying to first draw out the scale pattern that's closest to me, and then from there I can kind of start to overlap these and make them go flatter and flatter and flatter, right? Because as they round the surface, you know, because this is a cylinder, they're gonna start to get flatter and flatter and flatter and flatter as they go up and around that surface. So usually to draw these, I like to start with the one that's forward facing the most, and then kind of base off from there, because everything else is going to kind of overlap. It's the same way you could kind of handle drawing wings and stuff, and I could rotate this too to give myself maybe an easier time. But yeah, I'm trying to think of where that midline is, you know, of all these scales. You don't have to draw the midline, you just have to think about it. But yeah. There's a question from YouTube. Hi Osai Sato. I hope I'm saying that correctly. They are asking from YouTube, are we going to be combining several animals to create our creature? And the answer is yes. When it comes to creature design, it's really important to look at, you know, what already exists in order to influence and relate, you know, your character and ground your animal or creature into, you know, the real world. That's always super, super important. So yes. So right now what I'm doing is just studies, you know, and again, I could go into sketching out all these scales, but I don't need to. Again, draw what you feel like you're going to get enough out of learning. For me, I actually feel like I want to draw where these scales are kind of going underneath and around. They're going like underneath where the arm is, which is really cool. I love how these are all like wrapping underneath here, so you can easily see that this form is going out and then like under, which is really cool. And also, of course, my main man Synth is here. Hi, Synth. And we are making a cool creature. So, you know, if you're just tuning in, our last, you know, character was a mech, you know, kind of desert runner. And so we're going to create another character that kind of fits within that same world. But this time, instead of, you know, mechanized stuff, we're going to do some organic stuff. So we're going to do a creature. You know, whether this creature is, maybe it could be a companion, but I'm wondering if it's something that he has to face out in the desert. You know, maybe they hunt in packs, or maybe they do something. We don't really know yet. Not really sure what I'm going to make yet. But yeah, you can see how that's kind of working. So again, you know, you can go as far as you want with these designs. You know, maybe you can look at, I think the tail's really cool, because you can see that the tail splits off into just basically 3 sections, which is cool. And I like the overlap that it gets. So you get an overlap that goes like that, and then you get this new one that comes in, and then you get that next overlap, and then you get the new one that comes in. So there's this cool overlap that you're getting there that's really, really awesome. And again, this is more for like visual library stuff. You know, if I kind of reference and draw this out, you know, even just really quickly, like I'm doing now, that gets stored in your little visual library and in your little memory bank of things that you've drawn, you know. And the more you do it, the more the easier it gets with this stuff. And so yeah, so you can just kind of sketch out that stuff. But you know, I'll finish and I'll sketch stuff that is about this complete sometimes. I don't have to go crazy with all the scales if I feel like I've gotten what I want out of the drawing. You know, especially if you're going to the zoo, I think a lot of this stuff, you know, if you're watching the pangolin walk around, you'd probably be just doing like the overall gesture, right? So, you know, to show an example of that, I can do the gesture of this character, right, of this little dude, who's adorable, by the way. So, you know, because I really like the perspective of it. And again, the foreshortening is really interesting. So I would say that for this one, I'd be looking more at that overall, like where his arms are versus where his head is, you know, where his little There's his little elbow, you know, and looking at this overall shape and how it comes down. You know, where I'm looking at all the, I love how his little feet are turned in and all close to each other. You know, where's that balance at? Where's that happening? Because his feet are directly underneath this one hand here. You know, so you can turn that. And the little foot right there. Then you can turn this out and around. And then of course we can draw, that's the underside of his tail right there that's going over the little mound or whatever. So it's a little tail that's going up around. So, you know, you could easily do some reference like this first and just kind of do some stuff like that. And you can kind of maybe hint at some scales or, you know, something if you want to later. But this is really all you need. The rest is just a matter of, once you have the proportions and everything correct, then it's just a matter of detailing, right? Man, I love those hands so much. I do want to draw those hands. Those hands are great. These little weird claws, they're fantastic. Right, and that's now, what's great about this is if you're drawing this character or this creature at the zoo, you could get a gesture like this, and you could even go home and then look up, more reference of pangolins and finish this drawing later. It's really just about getting those main shapes in, and understanding that form. And then the rest is just fun little detailing. Because like this as a gesture is really cool. I could easily take this gesture and I could turn it into a creature. I mean, that's already looking pretty creaturey. Because imagine, if he's looking down and there's like a little dude that's like, oh no, oh my god. Right? If there's like a little character down here, that creates a whole new story, right? As to how big and the scale of these things are. So, King Tauntaun, it's nice to see your name up there. He's asking from Twitch, are there things that define monsters that we can see in classic monsters, like creatures from the Black Lagoon or other ancient beasties? That's a good question, because it's interesting because, you're talking about defining what a monster is, right? As far as from a storytelling perspective, but that changes so much based on what it's for, right? So, some of my classic favorite monsters are things like Godzilla, but Godzilla had very interesting, weird designs that kind of didn't make any sense. I mean, Megalon is a giant bug with drill hands, right? But for the context of what, they were trying to do with the show, it's very fitting. Whereas something like Frankenstein, there's obviously far more emotion and character that goes into something like that. I like this pose, so I'll do one more and then we can start doing some creature sketches. And I think that pose, that gesture is a lot of fun. So, but so a lot of what defines a monster is really about its purpose within your story. I think that's what's most important when you need to start thinking about like what are you trying to create. And for our stream, like I do talk a lot about like maybe this and maybe that, and that's just because I feel like the stream I want to show that you guys need to be asking questions. So for example, we're out here drawing what we call a monster, but what if this character is it's too big, I'm not gonna have room, is actually the other character's companion, right? So if it's a companion creature, that's definitely going to change story, because you're changing the relationship in which this creature lives with your other characters. And so, keeping that stuff in mind is super important with how you're going to be defining and designing your characters. Something like Aliens, which is a franchise that I work on at my studio, that's very different from, just animal creature design, because we're talking about horror and we're talking about xenomorphs and we're talking about things like that, its main purpose is to scare and to be scary and to be kind of alien and unknown, so that's its purpose. So when it comes to creature design and monsters, and I'll use those kind of intermittently. It doesn't really matter. It's really more about talking about the purpose of said monster. You know, so looking at this gesture too, I really like this front gesture, but I want it to, it's a little awkward in the back for drawing purposes. So that's where, you know, if you get good at this stuff or just being very aware of it, I'm going to make this guy a little smaller. Because we're getting this kind of gesture, right? So I kind of want to continue that feeling. So I can kind of push this, you know, so I can push that gesture so he feels like he's maybe walking down like a slope or something. So I'll put in that, because that is what he's doing. It's just I want to exaggerate it more. That's all. So I'm going to stretch this out a bit more. It's okay to kind of like draw and redraw, and, you know, I'm trying to be really loose with it first. You know, and I drew that slope pretty intensely, so I'll keep it. You know, I'll draw the foot out there. Maybe we can have the tail curling back in. I always feel like if you look at a lot of gesture drawing of animals, or if you're looking at, you know, someone like Tara Whitlatch or Claire Wendling does this a lot too, where she'll draw something, but the end of the gesture will always come back into the drawing or into the sketch. So it kind of keeps you going. The point is to go around in a circle, right? So you're going to keep looking at the drawing. If I put his tail and I kind of make it go that way, your eye is going to go from his head to his tail and then just back out of the drawing. So keep bringing your drawing back in is a nice compositional choice that you can make. Cool. Feeling pretty warmed up at this point. This is just making me really want to go to the zoo now. I haven't been to the zoo in a while, and it's perfect to go because it's not too hot yet. So the animals will be out doing stuff. When you go in the summer here, man, they're so boring. All the animals are just like laying down. So you have tons of drawings of animals that are just like chilling in the hot sun. And so it's not as dynamic or as challenging. You know, I've drawn so many animals lying down at this point, but it's still a lot of fun. But I should definitely make the habit to go. So there you go. So now we have some, you know, just some fun gesture drawings of looking at our reference, and now we can kind of start maybe coming up with some creature designs. So hide that, make a new layer. So to start with creatures, I feel like it's easiest to also do like a, you know, profile view first, just so that way you're not dealing. It's fine to, you know, draw these references in the angle that they're there, but when it comes to designing, it's nice to kind of break things down into its simpler shapes and forms first. So I like to start, you know, creature design by creating some side profiles, and then from there we can kind of turn it in space and figure stuff out. But it just is one last thing to worry about while you're designing. And then also in the beginning of design work, like I want to reference multiple of these. So I said I like the idea of doing the big cat, but that doesn't mean that's the only thing I'm going to try to draw. So for example, I do like that gesture that I did of the pangolin. So maybe we'll start there. We do this big, cool also to note, if we're thinking about, you know, the pangolin, I like the idea of it being maybe bigger than the dervish character in this case, right? So it's this big, pangolin shaped, you know, type character. So it'll have, you know, these big meaty arms And maybe it will have those claws. And you know, to make something feel big, I think we've talked about this before, but it's the same in creatures as it is in characters. Is you make their heads feel small. If you make their head tiny or their eyes really tiny too, he has multiple eyes. Then you know then he'll feel like bigger. Smaller heads will always make a character look like at a larger scale. Same thing with having small eyes. If I put really big eyes on this character, it automatically will make him feel like a rat or like almost like a shrew, right? Because eye proportion is really important for character and creature design. So I'm wondering if he can maybe he has like big tusks. Because I also have some other desert animal reference, and I see some boar, so that's kind of cool. So he's got some like kind of nasty boar tusks. And then maybe only the top part of him has some of those scalings that the pangolin has. I'm gonna try to keep the shapes like really fun and really pushed, because our mech character's fairly stylized, I would say, because that's just kind of the style that I like to kind of live in, especially on my own personal work and stuff, which is basically what this is. This is all personal work that I just get to share with you guys, which is fun. Synth is saying he loves the characters from Rango. Yeah, that movie, when I first saw that movie, I wasn't sure if I liked it. I couldn't really figure. I still don't know, actually. I don't know if I like that movie or not, but I do think the characters are really cool. I do agree with that. Rattlesnake Jake's a pretty cool looking character. But I'm also a little biased. I own a snake, so obviously I like snakes. But yeah, the movie's a lot of fun. I haven't seen it in a long time, though. I wonder how well the graphics hold up on it, like the CG characters, because it came out a while ago. I don't remember what year that came out, but so I'll have him holding up one claw. You know, and I'm a big fan of dinosaurs first, so when I see something like this, I'm like, ooh, maybe it's like an ankylosaurus, which has, you know, big plates that kind of stick out onto the side. So I can kind of start to say that that's maybe where these plates go, is they actually kind of fan out. And maybe in reality, he's like really wide, right? So maybe he's kind of like that. And like these little plates come out like that. And then he can, you know, so he kind of has this like cool, like protective shaded feel, which would probably be over his face as well. So we can add some of that and try to give it some depth underneath there. Make it feel like he's, you know, if he's living in the desert, maybe that's how he shades and protects his skin, is he has this really hard carapace at the top to protect his sensitive body, which is not that different from our reference. It's just maybe functioning and feeling a little bit more like a dinosaur, because why not, right? Dinosaurs are awesome. But again, you'll find similarities. You know, you can look at a pangolin and very much look at an ankylosaurus, and one's much larger than the other, but they serve a lot of similar purposes when it comes to their design and function. So I like the idea of maybe these get really big. And these don't have to be super pretty, super refined drawings, you know? Maybe it just gets like Monster Hunter big, right? Like we're talking... I love Monster Hunter creatures, by the way. I think they're great. I love their proportions, and I love the way they push shapes. There's a lot of fun stuff going on in Monster Hunter land. It's a lot of fun. I wish I liked playing the game more often, but I just like looking at the creatures. The weird lemur thing that throws fruit at you that has like a hand for a tail. Love it. Super fun. Good evening from YouTube. It's Chris. Hello. 2000. Oh, thank you, Synth. Oh, thank you, Synth. Synth gave me the year of Rango. I could just ask Synth to like, Synth, tell me something, and then he'll go research for it. I have my backstage buddy and my front stage buddy, Synth. It's great. So I'm gonna draw the again anteaters and pangolins walk on their knuckles, which is super interesting. It's really fun to go watch an anteater walk at the zoo. They have one at the LA Zoo. He's my favorite. He's a giant anteater. And his tail is awesome. It's like one of my favorite things to draw because their shapes are fantastic. And thinking of anteaters, like maybe this guy's got a little bit of fur underneath his big tail, so it's a lot of sensitive little fur, just like an anteater would. I always give myself the worst ideas when it comes to sculpting because I'm like, yeah, actually add some fuzzy fur. I'm like, what do you do? Why do you do this? You have to sculpt this later. But yeah, maybe he's got some little hairy bits and stuff. Maybe he's got a weird hairy bit. Again, some cool contrast I think is fun. You know, if he's got some hairy bits underneath. And there we go. Now we have a little pangolin type creature, right? And you can also, you know, if we know our Darvish character, if you wanted to, we could be like, yeah, our Darvish character is maybe this big in relation to this character, right? So you can kind of feel how maybe that would feel. You don't have to do that right now, but it's always a good thing to keep in mind. Again, I'm thinking this character is very large because I made his eye really small and his head small, so he's supposed to feel large scale, you know. Also, if you had some shadows under here, it'll definitely look like these plates are sticking out. And the longer the shadow, the longer the plate will look like it comes out because you're adding just more and more depth to your drawing. So you can easily sketch out some of that stuff just to bring it, give it some more depth. There you go. King Tauntaun coming in with some facts. He says, interesting note on monsters. Dragons and hoarding was actually because Norse people valued sharing. So the concept of ancient monster that hoarded meant it was horrific and visually and conceptually. That is also really fascinating. I love that. And that's also great. Like doing that kind of research is a really great example of how you can think about your characters. So, you know, especially in a world of story, like he says, you know, if you think about who maybe your people culturally in your story fight and what are their values, how can you make a monster that's, you know, the opposite of that or something that would be scary to them, right? So if they valued sharing and collectives, then obviously a monster that takes for himself and hoards is what they would come up with for like a mythological being to make sense of things and to, you know, tell their kids to share and all those things. I mean, Grimm's fairy tales are another really great example of, you know, designing something with the purpose of, you know, making sure people do good. So yeah, all that stuff is really great. Cool. So we have one pangolin type. I'll go ahead and do one that's, we haven't really played with our little armadillo friend here, so we can kind of maybe play with one that's like that. I think the tail of the armadillo is interesting. I also, obviously, I believe there's only 2 types of armadillo. It's like the 9-banded and the 7-banded or something like that. Point is, there's not that many armadillos, but they are very cool. This little carapace is really awesome, but we're going to see if we can combine it with something that feels a bit more agile. And not as slow paced. So I'll start with a form that's more like the big cat. So I'll give the anatomy a feeling of big cat feeling. And maybe instead of banding to roll into a ball, maybe it's banded because it allows its body to extend you know, for example, a cheetah's spine, I think, can extend up to like, I think it can gain some ridiculous number, like 4 feet or something stupid, or 2 feet. It might, 4 feet sounds like a lot. But it can extend its spine so much, and that's what gives it the range of motion that it has when it runs, is that it actually has a super flexible spine. So playing into that idea would be kind of fun if, you know, this character or creature had like a similar, you know, reasoning. So when he stretches, maybe it really stretches. It could be super weird, right? In this case, the 9-bit orbital he stretches in the sense that it rolls up into a ball. But again, it's creature design, so you can take what's there and kind of play with the concepts. And, you know, there's no wrong answers here. We're just having fun and playing with some ideas. If you stay too grounded, I find that, you know, your design can just feel like the mix of two animals. You don't want it to feel like a, you know, like a, not that there's anything wrong with a centaur or like a minotaur, but it is just half this, half that, right? And that's not really our goal here. Our goal is to create a new species that doesn't feel like just a half of something and a half of another thing, but to blend the anatomy properly, you know, with stuff. And maybe it's got like kind of a cool hip carapace or something. So it's kind of got protective, because maybe it's a predator, but it's not the only thing out there. So maybe it also needs to protect itself with some interesting little tidbits. You know, so when we're thinking about, in this case, you know, again, we don't have a lot of time on this stream usually to talk about like coming up with a real story. I think a lot of this is about coming up with ideation for characters that you could meld into something. So in this case, you know, we're just, the reason I'm sticking with these creatures or coming up with this type of creature design has a lot to do with just the environment itself that these creatures are in. So it has more to do with the function of what is it like to be a desert animal and be surviving than anything else. Just because for stream wise, that's definitely a lot easier. That's a scary looking face, but we'll go with it. So yeah, I definitely think as long as you know what you're designing for, you know, your creature designs will definitely feel a lot more grounded in that story. And that doesn't mean that grounded doesn't mean realistic. Grounded just means, does it feel right for the purpose in which you created it in, right? There are tons of really crazy, weird animals out there. For example, you know, Avatar: The Last Airbender, I believe, just really does combine things. You know, it'll be like a turtle duck, or it'll be a this, but they decided to be really consistent with that, like a flying lemur and this, right? So it's an animal plus something else that they combine, and they're really consistent with it. So again, it's not that that's wrong. It's just really about the purpose in which you create something. I'll make sure I'll add like a little bit of like a hint of there's some texture to this to remind myself that this is like a carapace. I also think that I need like more carapaces before it goes off into just like a normal tail. It's kind of like those rules of thirds and compositions still apply to when you're creating animal and creature design, anatomy and stuff. you know, you want it to feel normal. So again, you know, maybe the idea for this guy is when it runs at like full speed. Whoops, I always accidentally color pick. Maybe it can really stretch out. So it almost does this kind of thing, right? So it can super stretch. So it may not be very big, but if it has a really long gait, right, which is just range of motion and how something runs or walks, maybe it stretches out a lot, right? Could be kind of fun. Hi, Kevin. Kevin says that you can tell this is going to be a fun one. Yeah, I think this will be a fun one too. They've all been fun though. But yes, I do. I am the fan of the creature designs. So I'm going to try to combine some pangolin plus big cat, but I'm going to, I don't know, we'll see if we can make it kind of weird or interesting. Because again, like, you know, the anatomy of a pangolin is they're more plantigrade, but maybe we don't have to go entirely plantigrade, but maybe the back just feels a bit more plantigrade. So this one's supposed to be not so, it doesn't, you know, feel as nimble maybe as our like armadillo cat type character. Also, thing to note for you know, when you're designing like predator versus prey, predator characters or creatures. I'm gonna say characters / creatures a lot because I'm used to saying character. It's the same thing, but they have forward-facing eyes, right? Because they have to be looking at where they're going and watching their prey. Whereas prey animals tend to have eyes that are more to the side, so they have the full 360 view, so they can view what's around them easier. So that's a good thing to keep in mind. And again, if you just study, let me give it weird mole claw. Maybe it's like a raptor. It's got one weird raptor mole claw. Again, thinking about, you know, what's kind of weird or functional. I will always try to throw in a dinosaur because dinosaurs are super functional with their design and anatomy. I mean, they live for millions of years longer than us. And to give a relation to that, the T-Rex is more in a timeline is closer to the TV than it is the Stegosaurus, which is pretty crazy. That just gives you an idea of how long those animals lived on our planet for. It's pretty incredible. So maybe this one, it's great that I picked something that's got a lot of scales too. I'm really good at picking the hardest things. I'm not like, we're just gonna, you know, design a creature that's a fuzzball. Like, nah. We're gonna do scales and all sorts of stuff. We're gonna make my life so hard to try to sculpt these guys in what essentially is a day. I mean, I do work on them a little bit more outside of, you know, the stream, but 2 hours a week for 4 weeks basically turns out to be a day's worth of sculpting, you know? So if we were to marathon together like a 10-hour stream, that would be the equivalent of the monthly characters, which is, you know, again, me picking scales is always really fun to try to put that into a time frame, but it's all good. I like the challenge, and also this will be able to. I'll be able to demo, how I would tackle this stuff, because I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that are like, how would you, um, sculpt scales on this character? How do I do that practically and efficiently, as a character artist in the industry? I'm sure is a mystery for lots of people. So we can definitely get into it if we choose a character that's got. I mean, all these characters have plating, so far so good. Oh, 13 watching, 13 likes. Yeah, right? Well, if you guys don't like it, then it'll be pretty easy to spot all you guys out. I wasn't sure what you were talking about first, because I can't tell how many people are watching. I don't know. Every single time I get on here, I have no idea. I really like these big tail ideas. I think this would be fun. I like the idea of the creature being able to use it, just like a Ankylosaurus or something, which in that case, maybe it's not entirely plated. Maybe we'll come up with a design that, an Ankylosaurus's tail had these giant, awesome little, basically big, giant clubs at the end of their tails. And then on top of that, something that's kind of similar to this too is like a Stegosaurus, right? Which had the spikes, which I am blanking on the name of. Quick, Gary Larson, help me. I think they're called. What are they called? They're actually scientifically called this because of Gary Larson from The Far Side. So it's like a staglosizer, so it's called something funny like that. But anyway, Thagomizer. Thank you, houseplant. Yeah, if you guys don't know who Gary Larson is, definitely give him a look. He's one of my favorites, artist wise and storytelling wise. He's super good. He tells awesome stories in just one little panel. And to answer Chris's question, are you putting scales on that cheetah? The answer is yes, basically. Yeah, again, I like the idea of some sort of like plating, but again, the anatomy for this character's or creature's a little different. Oh, maybe he's got a big dew claw, which could, again, it's the silhouette of thinking of the pangolin, walking on its knuckles, but maybe in this creature, it's actually just like an extension of the dew claw. Also, if you guys have a favorite that you guys are liking, let me know, and we can continue to, if you guys like a certain shape. Like I like the big cat ones because I love big cats, but I do like the big, the idea of like a big monstrous pangolin that maybe buries itself into the desert and then pops out. That could be kind of fun. Whereas, this one I picture more being like a pack hunter or something like that. And maybe this one's like a lot bigger than what this character would be, but maybe more protective and just a real pain in the butt to kill. But yeah, we'll see. So I'll do another one of Well, we do have this fox character too, and I could also look up. I have I always have Pinterest open. And there's a lot of lizards in the desert, so we can kind of play with maybe like some lizard shapes as well. Lizards have pretty interesting anatomy, or maybe like a desert. Lizards are similar to crocodiles, and I like the anatomy of crocodiles, but maybe we can do like a sand type crocodiles that's got pangolin-esque features, or monitor lizards also live in the desert as well. So it's a bunch of cool shapes that we can kind of play with. So if we go with some sort of monitor lizard, it's gonna feel more basically like gonna be like a dragon. But this is where we could reference, what goes underneath the ground in the desert are things like sidewinders, and the way their scales work or allow them to shimmer and move to bury themselves underneath the sand. So that's a way we could reference, certain details of our creature design to again like ground it into something that is going to feel believable. And lizard anatomy in general is very different from anything that we've done currently. But again, they all live at the zoo, so you can all go check them out and study them. And again, the anatomy is there. It's just in different. It's all about knowing the anatomy and then understanding the proportion changes from one creature to another. It's not really about. None of these creatures have super different anatomy. A lot of these creatures are it's just proportions. It's just all about proportions in the right places. That one's feeling just kind of like a lizard, but that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. I like the idea of this, again, big, ever-spanning, like, tail that it could use. Basically kind of trying to combine and create, like, a sand crocodile. That could be kind of fun. If you could move in the sand the way crocodiles move in the water, that'd be pretty fun. And there's tons of desert lizards that already look like dragons, so I mean, it's really not straying too far from nature on this one. Yeah, it's feeling okay. Again, I'm just trying to give myself a lot of variation when you're first starting to ideate. So not just sticking to one body type is important because you might run into something that you didn't think of before that you're like, ooh, I actually really like, I like where this is going or I like that. So yeah, it's important to kind of just stay really open to things that you can create. And if we were to combine this lizard butt plus give it a bit more cat anatomy, so it'd be more on its haunches, but then it will really feel more like an alligator actually walking, but maybe we can play with those big mole hands. And then maybe instead of it being flat like this guy, maybe it stands more upright, you know? So it's got a really big, cool scale shape. I mean, who's to say it actually doesn't go in all directions, right? That could be kind of fun. That's feeling pretty Monster Hunter-y. I kind of like that idea. It also looks like Godzilla, so of course I'm gonna like it. And believe it or not, I mean, even though this has more kind of maybe crocodilian type anatomy, crocodiles can run pretty fast. They actually can gallop pretty pretty quickly, but maybe it lies in waiting, you know, under the sand, and they all pop out and attack. Drawn scales all day long. Yeah, see, I think we're getting like a pretty decent variation of shapes. I like this one. This one might feel a bit more herbivore-y. I'm getting more of an herbivore vibe, and I think a lot of that just has to do like that he feels really protected and defensed, which is not a bad thing. I think it's a cool idea. I definitely like this idea for sure. I'm just not sure if it feels like a predator though. It feels more like a prey. Or sorry, yeah, no, I meant that. It felt more like a prey. Also, if you make something with an eye that's like a little lower and stuff, it'll definitely feel less threatening versus something where if the eyes are more forward, right? So even just playing with eye position goes a long ways. Hello, Shoe Thief from Twitch. Nice to see you. So yeah, definitely playing with eye shape. You know, if you just have a head, really big eye, right, will make it feel smaller. An eye up here really far forward gives it a different vibe than, you know, an eye down here or something like that, right? Or one that's, you know, up here in the middle. So definitely play with that stuff when you're first, you know, designing and drawing. And I think you'd be kind of surprised at the feeling that brings. And a lot of it has to do with what we're used to seeing. So, you know, if the eye is kind of low and down here, one, it kind of has this resemblance of where an anteater face is, but also kind of feels kind of cowish almost. Doesn't necessarily feel super intelligent either. When animals have their eyes on like the side and are a little lower versus something that's more up forward and predatory, right? So keeping all that stuff in mind and knowing that those are some patterns that people will feel or see is important to know, like how to design or work around those design choices. So I'll do one more and then we'll probably just pick one and try to run with it. So I'm looking at the variety of stuff. I'm trying to think of, that we do have a fox in our reference, so it could be kind of cool to maybe play around with something like that. There's also a lot of boars in the desert, along with I see some hares, camels, my personal fave. I love camels. Camels are pretty great. Yeah, boar might be interesting. Because boar, they're herbivore kind of. They'll eat anything, but it's a very big defensive shape, so that could be kind of fun. So you could play with the idea of, a really big, strong shape that almost feels like bull-like. And the smaller head will definitely add to that, and maybe we can give it like a big, again, I'll always have dinosaurs, and maybe like a big Triceratops-ish type carapace. This again might end up looking more herbivory, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. Like bulls are pretty terrifying. They're herbivores. When I say terrifying, I mean I love bulls, but obviously I would not want to make one angry and go up against it. Same thing with like a rhino or a hippo. So again, I just kind of want to play with like a very different shape. So we'll make this feel more boar-ish. It's also giving kind of like a buffalo or like a bison. So bison have, there's the vertebra on the inside, but then they have these cool spine. The vertebra of the spine go really, really high, and that's what actually gives that like big hump shape, which is awesome. If you look up, buffalo skulls or skeletal structures, you'll find them, and it's pretty incredible. And they're also huge. They're way bigger than you probably think they are. And I kind of maybe we can keep with that same motif of big scaled, sharp club type. It's pretty fun. So again, this anatomy is going to be more like a boar, where it's got it's what people call the knee, right? If you look at like horse anatomy or just ungulates, which is hooved animals, this part here is the knee, but really it's actually the wrist. So in a human, you have the scapula, and then you have the humerus, and then you have the radius and ulna, and then you have like the wrist bone, and then you have all your phalanges, right? So you have all your little fingers. Again, it's the same thing for horses or ungulates or hooved animals, but there's the scapula, there's the humerus, the radius and ulna are merged together into one bone instead of being able to pronate and supinate, which is to turn your hand. And then the wrist bone is there, and then this is basically one big long finger that then turns into a toenail. So that's actually what creates what in horse terminology or ungulates would be called the knee, but it's not really a knee. It's actually this part of your body. So it's actually a wrist. So they actually walk on their fingernails, which is super interesting when we think of comparative anatomy. Synth is asking about the Ninja Turtles trailer. I have seen part of it. I actually haven't stopped to watch the whole thing yet, but I do have to. I saw snippets, and it does look pretty cool. I do like that stylized stuff is becoming more and more popular. I just hope it doesn't become so popular that one style just takes over. I feel like this just needs to be longer. Just kind of changing the shapes up a little bit. Kind of giving new proportions. That's pretty fun. I like this character. I like this one. This one's fun. I like the shapes. I think the shapes are really cool. Because bison and buffalo are really interesting shape design. You guys gotta help me pick one because I don't know either. So. This would definitely have the pangolin vibe of having the scales wrap all the way around. Maybe only halfway though. Maybe the rest of it isn't. Maybe it's just the front part to stay protected. Because maybe it uses its head to bash into stuff or something. Who knows? We'll come up with some cool stuff. You know, maybe it protects itself with it's got big triceratops type. And maybe this is like a stampede. That would be kind of cool. Yeah, I just hope that, since it's saying, the repetition of style, it can always just be a dangerous thing when something gets popular because then every studio has the feeling of, like FOMO, basically, of, oh no, that got popular, so we need to do it now. When really the idea of style is meaning your own unique, like style is something that's supposed to be unique from like project to project, But again, I'm happy that this cool. It feels very artistic, and it feels like they're going back to the fundamentals of 2D animation and all that stuff, which is great. I like the idea of like when this dude gets angry, like the scales like puff out, so he looks even bigger. That would be kind of cool. I think that'd be a cool idea for all of them. Like when cats, when big cats want to look bigger and like they puff up and they arch their back. I feel like this character would probably do something similar to that, which could be kind of cool. Man, I really don't know which one I like. Because now I'm actually like I so thought I was gonna come in here being like, yeah, big cat, let's go, and then just do kind of like big cat anatomy. Because usually that's the most dynamic, but I also like this big like bull type creature. This is really fun. It's just different. And maybe and again trying to think like what actually will fit best with our character and our story, right? So if our character is out in the desert, maybe he hunts these things, or maybe our mech is a poacher, which I don't necessarily agree with, but in our story maybe these scales are super valuable, and that's what they're designed to do. They're like designed to go out and like get these big creatures and stuff and like take their scales. But yeah, again, it's more about adding the conflict between the two characters, or what fits with our story. If it's this character, I feel like it'd be more about poaching and and trying to kill these things for materials, whereas this is a big cat or something that feels more predator is going to feel more like a fight for your life in that sense. Like they come after you, you don't go after it type thing. So yeah, not sure. I like C, I like A, and I like, I guess if we were to E, and then F is pretty good. We got like A, C, and F. So maybe we can go and take those a little farther, or maybe take some ideas that we like about. You know, that's another thing too, is you can easily say, okay, what did I like about F that maybe I can incorporate into C to make me like it more. Like I like the shapes going on here with these really big scales that kind of puff out, you know, so maybe we can do something similar in C, but make it feel more predatory in that sense. Again, this first sketch is the one that kind of based this like big sweeping tail type idea. But maybe it could be more to the side. But yeah, I'm definitely feeling the big scales. I think the shape design for that is working. Because it just has way more interest. So, you know, we can take that and maybe we can build on top of it. But do it with C. And that's actually pretty easy to do. So I can take this. Because again, as long as you know comparative anatomy, it shouldn't be that big of a deal to change this. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this guy. And then I'll paste it. And I'll hide these. So now I have our first iteration of this guy. Go ahead and duplicate this. Move this over. And we'll take a look at this guy and go, okay, what can we do to make it feel more cat-like, right? So, because I want to keep the stuff that I like, but I can just get rid of some other things and change it to feel more cat. You know, I can keep that dew claw in there that was there before. Maybe I can give it more of a cat. I mean, it had actually a pretty cat-like face already, but maybe somewhere in here I can add a little type of cat ear. So I'm gonna get rid of some of this here. You can see how we're now turning it into basically like a big cat, which this is also super fun. This song's fun. I like the sound of the. It's kind of silly. There we go. So it's now kind of more like a hunched over type. Really big saber tooth looking type. And that I'm starting to like. That's pretty fun. It's pretty cool. So you can see how you can easily turn, you know, one thing that you like and go, oh, what is it that's not working about this design that I can, you know, reiterate on and go, okay, what wasn't working? And like I said, this guy was feeling a bit more to prey, you know, more like a bull, which again is not wrong. I mean, that was kind of the idea that we went with, but with the story and who our other character is in this world, I just don't know if that's kind of the story that I want to tell, or maybe it's just more interesting that he runs into these like really big, you know, cat type creatures. Sounds kind of pretty fun. And these could hunt in packs for sure. But yeah, this kind of feeling, because now this gives the vibe of like a lion's mane almost, which is pretty fun. So I think we may have found what we're looking for, you guys. Cool. Yeah, I like that. That's fun. So, again, we can take this character now that we have that. And again, we can always keep just like iterating. So, you know, if I duplicate this guy and I go, maybe for a cat, if he's going to be running and, you know, has a really intense gait, maybe that torso is too short. So maybe I can take it and see what happens if I try to lengthen it. Because also, if you look at a penguin's got like a really cool long silhouette. Sorry, I'm bad at finishing my sentences where I'm very focused on gesture and drawing. But yeah, so now we have this cool, you know, shape, which we had before, but I feel like, again, this will make it feel a little different and see which one maybe we like more. This music is so funny. I'm trying to make sense of the anatomy too underneath it. And that's something that you can do once you have a design down. You know, you could duplicate the layer, or you could lower the opacity and draw some skeletal structure underneath it to try to find, like, okay, you know, if this is the design, like, where do the ribs live? Where does the vertebra live versus the hips? And just make sure that all of that feels, you know, consistent. You know, and we can play with, oh, what if it's got really big, you know, kind of like a stegosaurus or something. Right, so this is where we can start kind of adding more and more on top of, not over designing for sure, but just adding more of some of the ideas that create some really fun shapes. So yeah, I'm kind of liking that idea. It's fun. I'm gonna add some more scales up in the front to kind of accentuate this like main idea. I like, and again, the more we can add some dark shadows to that, it'll feel like they stick up. It's like a pill bug. Our favorite little isopods. Maybe he does roll up into a ball. He could. We can make him roll, but maybe he rolls around. I mean, again, if we're going with like some reference of like maybe Monster Hunter vibes, this character could totally roll up into a ball. It'd be very fun. And that's one of the things that I like to do too, is so once I have a design that I like, I'll do gesture drawings of them and try to figure out some posing for them, just so I can get a better feel of the character. Because again, we designed it from the side, but if you look at our reference, you know, we have a bunch of cool reference of more dynamic poses. And you can take the exact reference that you have and utilize it for starting to get some gesture and some feeling. So I like to pretend like as if I'm at, you know, the zoo or out on a safari and be like, what is this, you know, what would this character or creature be doing? You know, so I really like links up at the top of the cactus is really cool. So we can let's try to emulate that, but now doing it with a creature design. And I might push some stuff, right? So we'll see what we can do, but I kind of like the idea of maybe his paw is down. Maybe this paw is technically up, right? So if he's on like a rock, or when it doesn't have to be a cactus, but he's coming down off of something, that could be kind of cool, right? We're going to accentuate his big body shape. And thinking about the gesture, this gesture is going up and around, so maybe his tail comes back out this way, right? Always finishing with that cool gesture. So we start here, travel up and around. Maybe he's looking down. I'm not going to get too much into the anatomy of this because, again, a lot of it gets covered with, the big scales and stuff, right? So but I will try to, this is where you can have fun trying to figure out their face. So we'll give it more of a cat-like face. So I'm going to go ahead and try to block in some, maybe he's snarling or growling at something. He's got the big skull head, but he's going to flare out his scales, right? So we'll do that. Make sure his scales are kind of in there. It looks like a flower cat. He's so pretty. My dog just popped outside the window. Hi, dog. She likes to peek into the window and say hi when she's outside. She scared me there for a second. So you can see I try to keep it loose, so I'm not afraid of drawing and redrawing. I'm really trying to think of that shape. So it's basically like a big cylinder going back, right? So for drawing those scales, we got to think about like the perspective that these are gonna be in. Along with if these are be getting flattened out. Being squished around where he gets, where this elbow comes up. What might help him not look like a flower is doing what the penguin did. Like we talked about, is the scales go directly just back from each other. That might help make him maybe feel more aggressive and less like a dandelion. Get it, guys? Oh man, I crack myself up sometimes. Iron channel points. Thank you, Synth. I don't know what I don't know what channel points get me, but I'll take them. That's exciting. I'm assuming channel points are equivalent to like cool points, so. I will take it. Trying to think, maybe I want his our reference, the leg of the Lynx is kind of like that, which is pretty cool. So I'll keep it, and I'm gonna, you know, I'll use our reference just like we're supposed to. Right, because he's kind of squishing pretty hard there. And have that go down. Shade that in the back. Just do some little hatching so that way we can feel some depth back there. I have these big, cool scales. And again, like, this isn't gorgeous or anything, right? Like, try to just block this in quickly, somewhat quickly, just to get something down, like a feeling of some shapes. And hatch in some depth. I definitely like the idea of him having these like kind of big mole-like, he's almost got hands, like actually, oh my gosh, guys, we actually made Cyndaquil, not Cyndaquil, Sandslash. We made Sandslash. Oh no. Oh, that's funny. I was like, this character reminded me of something. We just made Sandslash basically, but it's like a cat Sandslash. Today's month, realistic Pokemon. Not exactly realistic, but yeah, there you go. That's fun. Oh my gosh, I keep erasing when I keep meaning to draw. Guys, wait, why didn't you stop me sooner? Be like, Ashley, wait, it's Sandslash, stop. Don't do it. Oh god. Whoops. I gotta erase that. It's distracting me. You know, I can go in here with the liquefy too, and I can push these scales out more. So that way it feels a little bigger. Liquefy tools is great for pushing your gesture a little bit more if you need to. All right, so that's where it was, right? That's where it is. It's pretty cool. I like being able to flip back and forth and to feel the difference between it. So there's one. And these always, for me at least, these help a lot for giving your character some more feeling and making them come to life a little bit more. There we go. Cool. I'll do some more. I also like really playful ones, so I mean, because when I go to the zoo, I draw a lot of, you know, like, what does this animal look like when he's, again, I draw a lot of animals lying down. So I feel like even doing something like that gives a lot of emotion and character too. Because he's not going to be attacking all the time, right? There's moments when he's just going to be chilling. I'll make sure his ground plane's okay. Kind of like the idea of him looking like up, you know, he's kind of like chilling. Maybe all of his, all of his spikes are going to be kind of laid back. And the more you can do this stuff, I also just feel like it gives you as the designer of the character or creature, whatever it is, a better understanding of that creature. You know, like if he lays down, what does happen to his scales, you know? Do they flatten out? Do they do this? Do they do that? You know? Thinking about this, for example, like if he has spikes at the bottom, how does his tail relax, right? Like, is it always up, or does he just not mind it being kind of like poked into the sand? Or is this something where we go, oh, that's not very practical, right? So maybe we have to get rid of it. Or just figuring out maybe they fold down, or, you know. So it's really more about giving yourself stuff to go, ooh, that's a problem, and now we have to solve it. Because that's 90% of stuff you'll do in the industry is just problem solving. His head's too big. That's too small. Yeah, so it doesn't have to be anything fancy, but, you know, just trying to figure out what he would look like, you know, laying down, is like a pretty good challenge to give yourself, because also it's an understanding of anatomy and making sense of something that maybe at first you weren't entirely sure of. You know, like how far into these scales go, and maybe this is all, you know, sensitive skin, like a protective layer. So yeah, I think stuff like this is always really useful. And for me, I like doing it too, because a lot of my style of why I 2D draw the way I draw, like part of why I draw this way, is because I want to be able to repeat what I do. So, because I like the idea of animation, I like the idea of being able to redraw characters easily. So having this knowledge of anatomy and function and form, over time, if I keep drawing this creature, I'll be able to quick hand, you know, draw him with no issues. Because you do studies like this to make sure that you truly understand like your creature, you know. All right, so there's that one laying down, and then maybe I'll do kind of like the idea. I mean, he's supposed to be a, I don't know, when it comes to animals, man, I'm always going to do one that I think is kind of like fun and cute. So maybe he's and again, this is also a test of pushing that anatomy. Little Jerboa. YouTube saying, nice to say, would be great when it's more finished. Yeah, we're going to get into, if you guys are just joining this stream and don't know what this stream is about, we're designing our next creature or archetype. In this case, it's the monster, the creature, whatever you want to call it, really. So the next time you guys will join me, we'll be sculpting it. So we'll be blocking it out and blocking it in 3D and sculpting in 3D and problem solving, all that good stuff. So yeah, if you guys are new to this, the first week of the new character, I will always draw. So I like to do this because I feel like if you're joining into the stream and you're not familiar with 3D, I think this is a nice way to show that I still use 3D a lot or 2D a lot in my designs and coming up with stuff. As my way of understanding creatures that I come up with or characters that I come up with. And then finish thinking them and realizing them in, see, we'll just get faster doing these scales eventually. And realizing them in 3D. Trying to wonder what would be the most playful look here. I think maybe his he's like stretching kind of forward to look at it. I love pushing shapes like this. It's super fun for me. But yeah, so we'll be so I like to design what we're going to be, sculpting out in 3D, but I like to draw it for the first week, and then the next 3 weeks are in ZBrush and, finalizing the design and whatnot. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. And every month has been super different from the next one. So it's keeping me fresh and keeping me having fun with it. And I hope you guys get to enjoy having fun with it as well. Because I just wanted it to be very varied in kind of like what we cover. And I mentioned last month that we did a mech, and I'm not super mech oriented in most of my stuff that I draw. Like a lot of the characters and things I draw are creature based and whatnot. But I wanted to show that you don't have to be afraid of approaching something that you aren't always confident in doing. And just to try to do it and play with what you have and with the knowledge that you have. And just make sure as long as you're having fun with it, I think you'll always be really surprised by the results. I was. So yeah, I think the 3D model will be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to sculpting this guy. So you can see as I start drawing more and more, like this is a pretty dynamic pose, but I got faster at it. And just trying to make this character feel proportionately the same. Possibly maybe his this front side would be a little bigger. So now I'm trying to find like the shorthanded way of drawing this character. And that's just for me. That's just, again, the way I like to try to draw. So now we're almost looking at like a ball or like almost like a puffer fish is kind of what I'm visualizing when drawing these forms. And the more you draw it, the faster you'll get. So it's, well, we have 10 minutes. We can still keep drawing. If you guys have a pose that you guys have in mind, we can do that. Maybe he can, this pangolin, right, can kind of go up on all two. Maybe he can as well. So we can play with that. We'll draw like a really tiny version here. So maybe as long as his, you want to think about the weight distribution and the balance, just like that pangolin reference, where his legs would be, and then his paws could kind of come up. Chatty on Fire is asking, have I started as a 2D artist? I'm assuming you mean in the industry, if I started as a 2D artist. And the answer is no. I started drawing, obviously, before I got into 3D. But my first job in the industry wasn't in 3D because I went to Gnomon School of Visual Effects, which is what this stream is kind of sponsored by. I also teach there. I teach Intro to Digital Sculpting, so I teach ZBrush there. But my first job was a character artist or a 3D modeler for Legacy Effects, which used to be Stan Winston Studio. So they basically made your childhood by making the Jurassic Park animatronics and all that stuff. So yeah, I worked there. But I always do, some concepting and some drawing. And drawing has always been something that I do personally for myself. And if you draw, I feel like it will always help your 3D as well. They kind of go hand in hand because all the fundamentals of 2D directly translate to all the stuff that you can do in 3D. This hand is looking weird. But yeah, I started in the industry as 3D, but my art career has definitely been 2D for a very long time. Or artist journey. I don't want to say career. The journey of being an artist. Synth asked him, do I usually do all the coloring offline or have it ready for the next stream once I get into sculpting? If I feel like or have the time to do some color options, I will. But, our last character I didn't color either. And we just did it on the fly on the stream, But I also feel like color palette's a little easier for this character because we have something to base it off of now. So where's my mouse? My character of last month, right, was this mech. So it's got tan with some blues and things like that. So we're definitely going to try to be opposing this and make it feel different from, that color palette. If you see the color palette that I chose here, like desert stuff is all really warm colors. So we'll probably shoot for some warmer colors, maybe he's really like rocky or fiery almost looking, we're definitely going to try to avoid making him colored like Sandslash. So that's definitely one of my goals now. And then from there we can see what we come up with. But yeah. Chatty on Fire says, without 2D, sometimes you can see some bad shape design. And yes, I do agree with that. I think learning the fundamentals of, shape language and form is a lot easier to tackle in 2D first before trying to approach that in 3D, because again, all the fundamentals, it all applies, but now you're adding an extra axis. You're adding that extra dimension. So you got to make your shapes look good from not just this 2D flat angle, but from all angles. And you'll see how I kind of approach that when we cover this character next week, as we finish up this sketch and whatnot. And I'll be wrapping up this stream soon, because we've only got like 5 minutes left or so. But yeah, so for the next stream we'll be we've got a pretty good foundation. You can see it's fun, right? He's like doing a little penguin thing. So again, allowing your reference to influence the personality of these characters. Now I kind of, I don't know. I'm a big animal lover, so obviously I'm like, yeah, this guy's gonna destroy that mech character. Like, this is the good guy now in my mind. Which is fine. Like, all that changes just for the sake of the stream. But obviously I like I'm a big fan of animals, so now I'm rooting for this guy. But yeah, so if you join us next Tuesday, same time, 4 to 6, we are going to start blocking out this character in ZBrush, which will be super fun. I'm actually really looking forward to it. I think we came up with a really cool character. I'm excited to continue, working on him and seeing how it changes once we approach 3D. But as you can see, we started with gathering some reference and drawing from our reference and getting prepared. And now that, I could easily take that gesture and turn it into our creature, right? Like, that's pretty close to what we kind of came up with, which is really fun. So we, doing some studies first, and then, blocking out some simple 2D shapes from the side and coming up with, who our character was. And it's funny because now that we look at this, right, like, this isn't even, our character's not even an option, but we looked at F and was like, ooh, I like the shape language. We like the design, right? So then we took that character and went ahead and said, okay, how can we make it, different? And so we did. I'm going to move this dude because it's easier. So, we took our kind of bull looking type character and was like, oh, how can we make that and turn it into like a big cat, and make it feel more like a predator rather than prey. And then that's where we came up with, we elongated the body a little bit, but that's where we kind of came up with our final design. So I think it's really cool. This is why I do this, the beginning of the streams for our new characters, because I think it's really helpful to see kind of the process. And again, our stories aren't anything extravagant. When I say that, talking about design and creating stuff, I think this is just more of like a white box or giving yourself some sort of limitation and then building upon that is really fun. And I like to show that process. So yeah, so that's where we're at. So now we have our basically Sandslash, Pillbug, Porcupine, Pangolin cat character, which we'll have to come up with some sort of fun name with. But yeah, so that's where we're at, and we'll do some colors and stuff as we go on. And next week we're gonna do the 3D block in. But for now, I'm gonna go ahead and sign off. Thanks for everybody who joined in the streaming. If you didn't catch the last character, you can watch that one on YouTube. They're all back there, so you can keep up with what character we're matching this with. And yeah, so thanks for tuning in, you guys, and I will catch you next week. Bye.